The drive down to Bridgewater took about an hour. I left Worcester just after 7 before the real traffic started and took Route 9 to 495. Coffee in the cup holder, radio off, just me and the road and that envelope sitting on the passenger seat. Massachusetts Executive Office of Health and Human Services. That's what the return address said. Official letterhead. They wanted me to evaluate a facility claim. Some dangerous patient was supposedly ready for reduced restrictions. The letter didn't say much else. Just gave me a date, a time, and an address I already knew. Bridgewater State Hospital. I'd been there before. Couple times, actually. Back when I was still with the state police, before everything went sideways. The place handled the worst cases. Criminally insane, violent offenders, people the regular system couldn't manage. Big brick buildings behind chain link and razor wire. Not the kind of place that called you in to say everything was going great. The letter was vague on purpose. That bothered me a little. They could have named the patient up front, saved everyone some time. But they didn't. Just said I'd get a full briefing on site. I had a pretty good guess who it was anyway. Traffic thinned out once I got past Brockton. The sky was that flat gray you get in March when winter's technically over, but nobody told the weather. Fields on either side of the highway, bare trees, everything still waiting for spring to actually show up. I kept the speedometer right at 65. No rush. I'd get there when I got there. The thing about these evaluations, they're supposed to be independent, objective. You go in, you review the records, you talk to the patient, you write up what you see. No bias, no history, just the facts as they sit right now. That's the theory. In practice, you can't really shut off what you already know, what you've already seen. And I'd seen plenty. 6 years back, I was working a case at a different facility. Smaller place, medium security, up near the New Hampshire line. We'd gotten word that one of the patients was showing concerning behavior. Making threats, hoarding materials, the kind of red flags that mean you go check it out before something happens. I went up with my partner at the time. We did the interview in one of those little rooms with the reinforced glass and the panic button under the table. Patient's name was Bo Haley, 22 years old, skinny kid, buzzed hair, pale green eyes that didn't blink much. He'd been committed after a string of arsons that escalated into an attempt on his stepfather's house. Stepfather made it out. Family dog didn't. Bo sat across from us and answered every question. Calm, cooperative. Said all the right things. Yes, sir. No, sir. I understand the concern. He smiled a lot. Not a big smile. Just this little twitch at the corner of his mouth, almost polite. Like he was trying real hard to show us he was doing better. I didn't buy it. Told the staff as much. Wrote it up in my report. Patient presence as rehearsed. Responses appear coached. Recommend continued observation and restrictions. 3 days later, Bo started a fire in the common room. Used cleaning supplies he'd been pocketing during his work detail. Waited until shift change when the halls were busy and everyone was distracted. 2 orderlies tried to get the other patients out. Carson Medina and Remy Johnson. They didn't make it. Bo did. Walked right out through the smoke with that same little smile and waited in the yard for the fire trucks. Didn't resist when they cuffed him. Didn't say a word. I got there maybe 40 minutes after it started. The building was still smoking. They had Bo in the back of a cruiser, and I walked over and looked at him through the window. He looked back. Didn't blink. Didn't smile that time, just stared. That was the last time I saw him in person. After that, they moved him to Bridgewater. Maximum security. He got charged with 2 counts of murder, pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and the court agreed. So he stayed locked up, under watch, in the kind of unit where you don't get second chances to play with matches. Or that was supposed to be the deal. I figured it was Bo the second I opened that envelope. Didn't know for sure, but I knew. The exit for Bridgewater came up on the right. I signaled, merged off, followed the access road past a gas station and a sad-looking diner that probably hadn't updated its menu since the 90s. The hospital sat back from the road, behind a perimeter fence and a guard booth. Big central building, couple of wings branching off. Everything that same institutional beige brick that every state facility seems to use. Budget-friendly, depressing as hell. My phone rang just as I pulled into the visitor lot. I parked near the back, away from the entrance, and checked the screen. Don Fisher. I answered. Yeah. You there yet? Don's voice had that gravelly edge it always got in the mornings. He'd been my supervisor back in the state police. Ran our unit for almost 15 years before he moved into an advisory role. Still kept tabs on cases, still knew everybody. Just pulled in, I said. What's up? Wanted to catch you before you went inside. He paused. I heard papers rustling on his end. You know who the patient is? Gotta guess. Bo Haley. There it was. I leaned back in the seat and stared at the hospital entrance. A couple of staff in scrubs were heading in through the main doors, IDs clipped to their belts. Figured, I said. Bridgewater's pushing hard to get him transferred, Don said. They're calling it rehab progress, saying he's stabilized, completed their program, shows sustained behavioral improvement, all the usual lines. They actually believe that? Somebody does, or somebody wants to. More rustling. Transfer requires 3 outside reviewers to sign off. You're number 1. They've got 2 more lined up after you. I didn't like that. 3 reviewers meant they were stacking the deck, looking for someone who'd give them the answer they wanted. If I said no, they'd just move on to the next name. Who requested me? I asked. Rehab director. Woman named Becky Miller. She asked for you specifically. That part bugged me a little. I didn't know any Becky Miller. Didn't have a reputation for being soft on these evaluations either. If anything, I'd expect them to avoid me. Why? No idea, Don said. But I'd keep your guard up. They're putting on a show for you, Vernon. Whole thing smells like PR. I watched a maintenance van pull up near the side entrance. Guy in coveralls got out, grabbed a toolbox, headed inside. Everything looked normal. Routine. Just another Thursday at the state hospital. You think he's actually improved? I asked. Don snorted. I think he's had 6 years to figure out what they want to hear. That sounded about right. Thanks for the heads up, I said. Yeah, watch yourself in there. He hung up. I sat there for a minute. The engine ticked as it cooled. A couple more people crossed the parking lot, heads down, moving fast against the wind. March in Massachusetts, always colder than it should be. Becky Miller. 3 reviewers. Bo Haley, ready for reduced restrictions. The whole thing already felt staged. I grabbed the envelope off the passenger seat, checked that I had my ID, and got out. The wind hit me right away. That damp kind of cold that goes straight through your jacket. I locked the car and started toward the main entrance. The building looked bigger up close. 4 stories. Rows of narrow windows with reinforced mesh. Concrete steps leading up to double doors with card readers mounted on the frame. Security cameras covered every angle. Standard setup for a facility like this. Nobody gets in or out without someone knowing about it. I climbed the steps and pushed through the doors into the lobby. Warmer inside, but not by much. Linoleum floors, fluorescent lights. That smell every institutional building has. Disinfectant and old paint and something else I could never quite place. A reception desk sat directly ahead, staffed by a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain and a clipboard in front of her. Help you? She asked. Vernon Price. I'm here for an evaluation. She checked her clipboard, ran her finger down a list, and nodded. They're expecting you. I'll need to see ID. I handed over my driver's license. She scanned it, wrote something down, then passed me a visitor badge on a lanyard. Clip that where it's visible, she said. Someone will be down to escort you in a minute. You can wait over there." She pointed to a row of plastic chairs along the wall. I took a seat. The badge felt heavier than it should. Temporary access, controlled movement. Everything here ran on permissions and protocols. 2 other people sat waiting. One looked like family. Middle-aged woman clutching a purse, staring at the floor. The other was a guy in a suit with a briefcase, probably legal. Nobody talked. We just sat there under the hum of the lights. I kept thinking about what Dawn said. They're putting on a show for you. Yeah, probably. These places always did. When an evaluator came through, they cleaned up the rough edges, prepped the staff, made sure the patient knew how to perform. It wasn't exactly lying, more like careful framing, showing you the best version of what they had. The trick was figuring out what they weren't showing you. A door to the left of the reception desk opened, and a woman stepped through. Late 30s, maybe 40. Dark hair pulled back tight, sharp cheekbones, wearing a white lab coat over a gray blouse and slacks. She carried a tablet under one arm and moved like someone used to being in charge. "Mr. Price?" I stood. "That's me." She crossed the lobby and extended a hand. Firm grip. Professional smile. "Becky Miller. I'm the rehab director here. Thanks for coming down on short notice." So this was her, the one who'd asked for me by name. "No problem," I said. "We've got everything set up for you. Records, interview space, full access to staff and patient history." She gestured back toward the door she'd come through. "If you'll follow me, we can get started." I clipped the visitor badge to my jacket and followed her through the door into a hallway that stretched deep into the building. Beige walls, more linoleum, doors with small windows and card readers. We passed a couple of orderlies pushing a meal cart, and they nodded at Becky as we went by. "I understand you've worked with the state system before," she said, not looking back. "Used to. State police." "That's what I heard. Good reputation." She swiped her card at another door and held it open for me. I thought it'd be helpful to have someone who understands the full context. These cases can be complex. Complex. That was one word for it. We turned down another hallway, this one quieter, fewer people. The fluorescents flickered a little overhead. "I'm sure you've already guessed who the patient is," Becky said. "Bo Haley." "Right." She glanced back at me just for a second. "I know his history. I know what happened 6 years ago. But I think you'll find he's made significant progress since then. We've developed a really comprehensive program here, and he's been an active participant. Active participant. Therapeutic language. Exactly the kind of framing I expected." "Looking forward to seeing it," I said. We stopped at another door. Becky swiped her card, and it opened into a small conference room. Table, chairs, a window that looked out onto an interior courtyard. A stack of folders sat waiting on the table next to a laptop and a legal pad. "This is yours for the day," Becky said. "Everything you need should be in those files. Psychiatric evaluations, incident reports, program completion records, staff observations. I've also scheduled time for you to interview Bo directly, if you'd like, and I'm available if you have questions." I stepped into the room and looked at the stack of folders. Thick ones, lots of documentation. That was another tell. When a facility wanted to move someone, they buried you in paper. Made it look thorough. Made it harder to spot the gaps. "Appreciate it," I said. "Take your time. No rush." She smiled again, that same controlled, professional expression. "I really do think you'll be impressed with what we've accomplished here." She left, pulling the door closed behind her. I stood there for a second, looking at those folders. "They're putting on a show for you." Yeah, they were. I set the envelope down, pulled out a chair, and sat. The top folder had Bo's name printed on the tab. I opened it and started reading. Time to find the cracks. I figured Becky Miller would show me the files first. That's what they always did when they wanted something to look good. Start with paper, build the narrative, get you nodding along before you ever saw the person. She was already talking when I sat down. Professional, smooth, the kind of voice that had given 100 presentations and knew exactly where to pause. Beau's been with us 6 years now, she said. She slid the first folder across the table toward me. Thick thing, maybe 2 inches of paper held together with metal clasps. His treatment trajectory has been exceptional. We don't use that word lightly. I opened the folder. Progress notes, typed and dated. Monthly summaries going back 3 years. Before that, incident reports and observation logs. He completed our core behavioral program within 18 months, Becky continued. She had her tablet in one hand, but she wasn't reading from it. She had this memorized. Participated in group therapy without disruption. No violent incidents, no disciplinary actions of any kind. I scanned the first page, attended morning session, engaged appropriately with peers, demonstrated insight into past behaviors. The language was careful, clinical. It didn't tell me much. After that, we moved him into our vocational track. Becky tapped the folder. There's a section in there about the greenhouse program. He's been working there for 2 years. Staff supervision, of course, but he's reliable, shows initiative. Greenhouse program. I flipped forward until I found it. Color photos printed on regular paper stapled in. Beau in a green apron, hands in soil, planting something in a long wooden box. His face was calm, focused. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was longer, pulled back. No smile in any of the pictures. He also tutors, Becky said. Literacy program for lower functioning patients. Twice a week. We have observation reports from the supervising instructor. I turned more pages. Found the tutoring logs. Beau Haley assisted 3 patients with reading exercises. Patient A showed improvement in letter recognition. Beau remained patient and supportive throughout session. Stability, Becky said. She leaned forward slightly, just enough to make it feel like she was sharing something important. That's what we look for. Sustained, measurable stability. Not just compliance. Real behavioral change. I didn't say anything. I kept reading. She waited a few seconds, then kept going. We've had psychiatrists evaluate him every 6 months. You'll see their reports in the second folder. Consensus is that he's responded well to medication, that his insight has deepened, that his risk profile has decreased significantly. I glanced up. Decreased. Significantly, she repeated. Her tone didn't change. Still calm, still steady. I looked back down. Found a psychiatric eval dated 4 months ago. Patient demonstrates appropriate affect, expresses genuine remorse regarding index offense, engages in meaningful self-reflection. Prognosis cautiously optimistic with continued treatment and structured environment. Cautiously optimistic. That was the line that mattered, the one that left room. We wouldn't be recommending transfer if we didn't believe he was ready, Becky said. This isn't about clearing beds or cutting costs. This is about a patient who's done the work. I closed the first folder, pulled the second one closer. You said he asked for me. She paused, just half a second, then nodded. He did. Why? He remembered you. Becky's voice stayed even, but I could tell she'd been expecting the question. From the original interview, he said you were fair, that you listened. Fair. I didn't remember being fair. I remembered writing a report that said he shouldn't be trusted. When did he ask? I said. 2 weeks ago. When we told him we were pursuing transfer approval and that an outside evaluator would be assigned. She tilted her head slightly. He asked if it could be you. We thought that showed good judgment, willingness to face someone from his past. Or he wanted to prove something, or he liked the idea of convincing the person who'd flagged him the first time. I didn't say that. I opened the second folder and started reading again. Becky stayed quiet for a minute. Let me work through another few pages. Then she stood. "I'll give you time with the files, but if you'd like, I can walk you through the unit afterward, show you where he spends his time, introduce you to some of the staff who work with him directly." I looked up. "I'll want to interview him." "Of course," she said. "We have a room set up, whenever you're ready." She left after that. Door clicked shut behind her and I was alone with the folders. I read for maybe 40 minutes. Took a few notes on the legal pad she'd left. Most of it was what I expected. Detailed, thorough, organized to tell a story. Progress in every category, improvement across every metric. A couple of small setbacks early on, nothing recent. Nothing in the last 2 years except steady, positive momentum. It felt too clean. That was the thing that stuck with me. Nobody got better in a straight line. People backslid. They had bad weeks. They got frustrated or angry or tired of pretending. But Bo's file didn't show any of that. Just months and months of appropriate behavior and meaningful engagement. I stacked the folders back together and stood up. Becky was waiting in the hallway when I opened the door. I don't know if she'd been standing there the whole time or if she'd timed it, but she turned the second I stepped out. "Finished?" she asked. "For now," I said. She nodded and started walking. I followed. The hallway was narrow, beige walls on both sides. Linoleum floors that had been cleaned recently enough to still smell like disinfectant. Fluorescent lights overhead, the kind that hummed just loud enough to notice if you paid attention. We passed a few doors, administrative offices from the look of it. Nameplates next to each one. Most of them were closed. There was a window about halfway down. Tall, narrow, reinforced glass with wire mesh inside it. Becky walked past it without looking, but I slowed down. There were tiny dark shapes on the windowsill, clustered near the frame. I stopped. Insect husks. Maybe a dozen of them. Small, brittle, translucent. They looked like they'd been there a while. Some were broken, just fragments. Becky noticed I'd stopped. She turned back. "Something wrong?" I pointed at the windowsill. "What's that?" She glanced over, didn't seem concerned. "Oh, probably just ladybugs. They get into the building this time of year." Ladybugs didn't leave husks like that, not in clusters, not all in one spot. Before I could say anything, a guy in coveralls came around the corner from the other end of the hall. Older, maybe late 50s, thinning gray hair under a faded cap. He had a rag in one hand and a spray bottle in the other. Becky waved him over. "Jimmy, can you take care of this?" Jimmy walked up, looked at the windowsill and shrugged. "Yeah, sure." He wiped the husks away with the rag in 2 quick strokes, didn't even look twice. "Normal building stuff. We get all kinds of bugs in the spring." "It's March," I said. "Early spring," Jimmy said. He stuffed the rag into his pocket. "They start waking up when it warms up outside. Then they get in through the vents or the window seals. No big deal." He walked off before I could ask anything else. Becky was already moving again. "The maintenance team stays on top of it," she said over her shoulder. "Old building. You're always dealing with something." I looked at the windowsill one more time. It was clean now. Nothing left except a faint smudge where the rag had been. I filed it away. Probably nothing. But I'd worked enough cases to know that probably nothing sometimes turned into something later. Becky led me through another door at the end of the hallway. This one needed a card swipe. She pulled a lanyard out from under her lab coat, tapped it against the reader, and the lock clicked open. The air changed on the other side. Cooler. The disinfectant smell was stronger here, mixed with something else. Food, maybe. Or floor wax. There was a guy standing just inside. Younger, maybe early 30s, short brown hair, corrections uniform with a radio clipped to his chest and a duty belt around his waist. He straightened up when he saw us. "Blake," Becky said. "This is Vernon Price. He's here to evaluate Bo Haley." Blake nodded at me, didn't offer his hand. "Blake Duncan. I'll be escorting you." "Escorting," I said. Standard procedure, Becky said. She looked at Blake. Mr. Price will want to see the unit, speak with Bo, maybe talk to a few staff members. No problem, Blake said. He had that tone, the one that said this was just another Tuesday. Routine, nothing unusual. I didn't trust it. Blake stepped aside and gestured down the hallway. Whenever you're ready. Becky stayed behind. I'll be in my office if you need anything. Blake can reach me on the radio. I looked at Blake. He had his hand resting on his belt. Casual, relaxed. Like we were about to take a tour of a college campus. Let's go, I said. Blake started walking. Didn't hurry. Didn't check behind him to see if I was following. Just strolled down the hallway at an easy pace, keys jangling on his belt. We passed another door. Blake swiped his card without breaking stride. The lock clicked. He pushed it open, held it for half a second while I caught up. Units this way, he said. Shouldn't take long. That was the thing that bothered me, the way he said it. Shouldn't take long. Like this was simple, like there was nothing here that required careful attention. I'd been in enough facilities to know that the staff who acted the most relaxed were usually the ones who'd stopped paying attention. They'd done the same walk 100 times, seen the same patients, filed the same reports. It all became routine, background noise. And that was when things went wrong. Blake turned a corner. I followed. Another hallway, another set of doors. He moved through them without hesitation, swiping his card at each one, pushing through, letting them close behind us. I kept my eyes open, watched the doors we passed, watched the cameras in the corners, watched Blake's posture, the way he held himself. He wasn't worried about anything. That made one of us. Blake Duncan showed up in the hallway about 30 seconds after Jimmy walked off. Tall guy, maybe 6'2", close-cropped brown hair, corrections uniform with a radio clipped to his belt and keys jangling on a chain. He nodded at Becky and then at me. Didn't introduce himself right away. Becky said, Blake will take us through to the greenhouse. That's where Bo spends most of his vocational time. Blake pulled a card from his belt, swiped it at the door Jimmy had come through earlier, and held it open. We walked through into another corridor. This one was wider, with tile instead of linoleum, and the walls had that same beige paint but with scuff marks near the baseboards, probably from carts or equipment getting wheeled past too many times. Blake walked ahead of us. Becky stayed beside me. She was talking again. Something about the greenhouse program being one of their most successful initiatives, how it gave patients meaningful work and a sense of accomplishment. I wasn't really listening. I was watching Blake's shoulders, the way he carried himself. Steady, professional. Probably did this walk 100 times a week. We turned left at the end of the hall, went through another locked door, and then down a ramp that sloped gently toward what I figured was ground level. The air changed, got cooler, damper. There was a faint smell I couldn't place yet. Not bad, just different. At the bottom of the ramp was a metal door with a small reinforced window. Blake unlocked it and pushed it open. Warm air hit me immediately, humid, heavy. The kind of air that sits in your lungs. The greenhouse wasn't huge, maybe 20 feet by 30. Rows of wooden benches lined both sides, each one holding plastic trays and pots with plants at different stages. Tomatoes, I think. Maybe peppers. Some leafy stuff I didn't recognize. The walls were panels of thick plastic sheeting over a metal frame, and overhead were grow lights hanging from chains. Bright white, buzzing faintly. Becky stepped inside and gestured around. Bo works here Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, supervised by our horticultural specialist. He's responsible for watering, transplanting, and general maintenance. I walked down the center aisle between the benches. The plants looked healthy enough, green, no obvious wilting or disease. The soil in the trays was dark and moist. Everything seemed fine. But there was that smell. Sour sweet. Not rotting exactly, but close. Organic decay mixed with something sharper. I stopped halfway down the aisle and turned my head, trying to pinpoint it. Becky was still talking. He's shown real dedication to the work, never missed a session. The specialist says he follows instructions perfectly and takes initiative when he sees something that needs attention. I knelt down beside one of the benches on the left, looked underneath. That's where I saw them. Paper strips, damp, chewed up, scattered across the concrete floor in a loose pile beneath the bench. Maybe a dozen pieces, each one about the size of my thumb, edges ragged and soft from moisture. They'd been there a while. The concrete around them was stained darker. I reached under and pulled one out. It fell apart between my fingers. Pulp, basically. I couldn't make out any text or print, just white mush. Becky came over, looked down at what I was holding. "What is that?" I asked. She frowned, tilted her head slightly. "Worksheets, probably." Bo used to have some anxiety around written materials early in the program. Chewing paper was a self-soothing behavior. He's since developed healthier coping mechanisms. I dropped the piece and wiped my fingers on my jacket. "These are under the bench." "Maintenance doesn't always get under every surface," Becky said. "It's an old habit. Managed now." I stood up, looked at her. "Managed." "Yes." She didn't blink. "He hasn't exhibited that behavior in over a year. The specialist would have reported it." I didn't say anything. Just looked back down at the pile of chewed paper. Then at the plants. Then at the grow lights overhead, still buzzing. Blake was standing by the door with his arms crossed, watching us but not saying anything. That sour, sweet smell was stronger near the bench. I figured it was coming from the paper. Whatever Bo had been chewing on, it hadn't been dry worksheets. Something else. Something that rotted. Becky stepped back toward the center aisle. "If you're ready, we can move on to the interview room. Bo's been notified and should be waiting." I took one more look around the greenhouse. Everything in its place. Everything clean and organized and exactly what you'd expect from a model rehabilitation program. Except for the pile of chewed pulp under the bench. "Yeah," I said. "Let's go." The interview room was on the second floor. Small, maybe 10 by 12. Table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs on either side also bolted. One-way glass on the left wall. Single door with a card reader and a small window. Fluorescent lights overhead, no clock, no decorations. Nothing on the walls except beige paint. I sat down on the side facing the door. Blake stood near the corner behind me, close enough to respond if something happened, but far enough back to stay out of the way. Becky had gone into the observation room behind the glass. I could see her silhouette through it, blurred and dim. The door opened. Bo Haley walked in. He was smaller than I remembered. 5'8", maybe 150. Buzzed light brown hair, pale green eyes, narrow jaw. He wore state-issued gray pants and a gray shirt, both clean and pressed. His posture was upright, controlled. He didn't slouch or shuffle. He walked straight to the chair across from me and sat down without being told. Blake closed the door. It clicked shut. Bo folded his hands on the table, looked at me, didn't smile. "Mr. Price," he said. His voice was soft, even. "It's good to see you again." I didn't respond right away, just looked at him. His face was older now, sharper. The boyishness I remembered from 6 years ago was gone, but the eyes were the same, pale green, calm, watching. "Bo," I said. He nodded once. "I appreciate you coming. I know this isn't easy." That was the first line, rehearsed. I'd heard it before in other interviews with other patients. The opening that sounds humble and self-aware and puts the evaluator at ease. I pulled out the legal pad I'd brought with me and set it on the table. Clicked my pen. "Walk me through your day," I said. "Start to finish." Bo didn't hesitate. "I wake up at 6:30. Breakfast is at 7 in the common area. After that, I have group therapy on Mondays and Wednesdays. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I work in the greenhouse from 9 to 11:30. Lunch is at noon. Afternoons vary depending on the schedule. I tutor in the literacy program twice a week. I have individual therapy on Fridays. Dinner is at 5:30. Recreational time until 8. Lights out at 9. He delivered it without pausing. No hesitation. No filler words. What do you do during recreational time? I asked. Read, mostly. Sometimes I play cards with other patients. Sometimes I just sit. What do you read? Nonfiction, history, biographies. I'm working through a book about the Dust Bowl right now. I wrote that down. Not because it mattered, but because I wanted him to see me writing, wanted him to know I was paying attention. Tell me about the greenhouse, I said. Beau's expression didn't change. It's part of the vocational program. I work with plants, tomatoes, peppers, herbs. We grow them from seed, transplant them, maintain them. It's structured, repetitive. I find it calming. What do you find calming about it? The routine, the predictability. I know what needs to be done and I do it. There's no ambiguity. I nodded. Wrote that down too. Do you ever get frustrated? I asked. Sometimes, if a plant doesn't respond the way I expect. But I've learned coping strategies. Deep breathing, grounding exercises. I talk to the specialist if I need support. All the right answers. All the things the program taught him to say. I flipped a page on the legal pad. Tell me about the fire. Beau's hands didn't move. His face didn't change. He just looked at me. I started it, he said, during shift change. I used cleaning supplies I'd taken from the cart earlier that week. I knew the timing. I knew the layout. I knew what would happen. Why did you do it? I wanted control. I wanted to prove I could make something happen. I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about the people who would get hurt. 2 men died. I know. His voice stayed soft, even. Carson Medina and Remy Johnson. I think about them every day. I carry that. I'll carry it for the rest of my life. I wrote their names on the pad, underlined them. Do you feel remorse? I asked. Yes. What does that feel like? He paused for the first time, just a second. Then he said, heavy, like something pressing down on my chest. I can't undo what I did. I can only try to be different now. Textbook answer. Exactly what the therapist would want to hear. I set the pen down, leaned back in the chair. You asked for me specifically, I said. Why? Beau looked at me without blinking. Because you didn't lie to me last time. You asked real questions. You didn't pretend to be my friend. I respected that. I wrote a report that said you shouldn't be trusted. I know. You were right. I picked the pen back up. And now? Now I've done the work. I've learned the skills. I've changed my behavior. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to evaluate the evidence. He said it without emotion, without pleading, just stated it. I glanced at the one-way glass. Becky's silhouette was still there, watching. Beau followed my gaze, then looked back at me. How's your daughter? He asked. I stopped writing. Janet, right? Beau said. His voice didn't change. Still soft, still even. She'd be about 12 now, I think. I set the pen down slowly. My hand wanted to tighten into a fist. I didn't let it. That's not in any file, I said. No, Beau agreed. It's not. I looked at him. He looked back, calm, controlled, waiting. I wanted to stand up, wanted to lean across the table, wanted to ask him how the hell he knew my daughter's name. But I didn't, because that's what he wanted. He wanted me angry, wanted me off balance, wanted me to make a mistake. So I picked the pen back up, and I wrote down exactly what he'd said, word for word. Because anger gets you nothing in a room like this. Anger makes you sloppy. Anger makes you miss things. I kept my voice level, professional. Tell me about the literacy program, I said. Bo smiled, just a little, just at the corners of his mouth. Then he started talking again. Becky met me outside the interview room. Blake stayed with Bo to escort him back to his unit. She asked if I'd gotten what I needed, and I said I wanted to see where Bo spent his time during the day. She nodded and started walking. We went down another hallway with the same beige walls and fluorescent lights. The building all looked the same. Same floors, same smell, same humming overhead. Becky stopped at a doorway and gestured inside. Day room, she said. Patients used it for recreation and group activities. I looked in, maybe 20 by 25 feet. Tables and chairs bolted down. A television mounted high on the wall behind a protective cage. Shelves with board games and paperback books. 3 men sat at different tables. One stared at the TV even though it wasn't on. One had his head down on folded arms. The third sat with a workbook open in front of him and a pencil gripped in his fist. Becky walked in and I followed. She went straight to the guy with the workbook and said his name. Lucas. He looked up fast. Thin guy, maybe late 40s with stringy blonde hair and hollow cheeks. Wore gray state-issued sweats. His eyes went to Becky first, then to me, then back to Becky. "This is Lucas Stevens," she said. "He's one of our participants in the literacy program. Lucas, this is Mr. Price. He's visiting today." Lucas nodded at me, but didn't say anything. He held the workbook up a little, like he was showing it to a teacher, like he wanted approval. "Lucas has been working with Bo twice a week," Becky said. "He's made real progress." I stepped closer and glanced at the workbook. Basic stuff. Fill in the blank sentences, simple words, cat, dog, run. But the margins were covered in drawings. Small circles with lines sticking out. Legs, maybe. 6 legs each. They marched in rows down the side of the page. Dozens of them, all identical, all facing the same direction. "That's good work," I said. Lucas pulled the workbook back against his chest and nodded again. "Thank you," he said. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. Becky smiled and told Lucas to keep it up. She turned and walked back toward the door. I followed, but looked back once. Lucas was staring at the workbook again, pencil moving, drawing another circle. The drawings didn't look like normal doodling, too precise, too repetitive. They looked like something someone drew when they were thinking about one thing over and over. Becky walked me back to the lobby after that. She said she'd send over the full incident reports and additional documentation by email tonight. I thanked her and left. I got a room at a Quality Inn off Route 24 in Brockton, 40 minutes from the hospital, nothing special. Queen bed, desk, chair, bathroom with weak water pressure. I dropped my bag on the bed and sat at the desk. Becky's email came through at 6:17. 3 attachments. I opened the first one. Incident reports going back 3 years. I printed them at the business center downstairs, came back up and spread the pages across the desk. I read for 2 hours. The reports were clean. Too clean. In a facility like Bridgewater, you get incidents. Patients argue. Someone refuses meds. Someone has a bad day and throws a chair or yells at staff. It's normal. It's expected. You see patterns in the reports. Certain patients have more issues than others. Certain times of day are worse. Certain staff members write more reports because they're more cautious or less experienced. These reports didn't have that. They were smooth, steady. A couple small things early on. A patient refusing to attend group. Another patient breaking a plate in the cafeteria. Nothing involving Bo. Nothing recent. The last 6 months were almost empty. Just routine notes. Everything fine. Everyone compliant. One entry kept showing up. Paper debris found in vents near the high-security wing. Always the same phrasing. Always blamed on renovations. The hospital had been doing upgrades to the HVAC system, the report said. Dust and scraps got pulled into the ducts. Maintenance cleared it out. No further action needed. The entry appeared 4 times over 8 months. Same vent, same debris, same explanation. I pulled out my phone and called Don. He picked up on the second ring. "You still at the hospital?" he asked. "Hotel," I said. "Brockton." "How'd it go?" I told him about the interview, about Bo asking about Janet, about the files being too clean in the vent reports. Don was quiet for a second. Then he said, "They've been pushing renovations for a while now." "What do you mean?" "Every time someone raises a question about that facility, they point to renovations, new HVAC, new wiring, new security upgrades. Makes it sound like they're investing, improving. Covers a lot of noise. You think the debris is something else?" "I think debris doesn't show up in the same vent 4 times unless someone's putting it there," Don said. "Or something's nesting." I didn't say anything. "You find out what it is?" he asked. "Not yet." Don exhaled. "Be careful, Vernon. They asked for you by name. That means something." "I know. Call me tomorrow," he said, and hung up. I stared at the incident reports for another 20 minutes. Then I stacked them, turned off the desk lamp, and got ready for bed. I woke up at 11:43. Not sure why. I hadn't been dreaming, hadn't heard anything. Just woke up with my eyes open and my hand itching. I reached down and scratched my forearm. The itch didn't stop. It moved, crawled up toward my elbow. I sat up fast and turned on the bedside lamp. There was a bug on my arm. Small, maybe a 1/4 inch long, pale, almost white. Soft-bodied, not hard like a beetle. It had legs, 6 of them, thin and delicate. And it moved slow like it wasn't used to open air, like it had just come out of somewhere dark. I brushed it off onto the sheet. It landed on its side, legs twitching. Then it righted itself and started crawling again, toward the pillow. I grabbed a tissue from the nightstand and pinched it. The body was soft. It squashed easy. I wiped it on the tissue and looked close. No wings, no shell. Just a pale, segmented body and those thin legs. It looked like something that hatched indoors. Something that didn't need sunlight or outside air. Something that lived in walls or ducts or places people didn't look. I checked the rest of the bed, pulled back the sheets, checked the pillowcase. Nothing else. I dropped the tissue in the trash, turned off the lamp, and lay back down. I didn't fall asleep for a long time. I left the hotel at 6:30. Didn't bother with breakfast, just coffee in a paper cup from the lobby, and the printed incident reports folded in my jacket pocket. The drive back took 35 minutes. Route 24 to 495. Same roads as yesterday, but emptier. The sun came up pale and cold behind me. I kept thinking about the bug on my arm. Soft body. 6 legs. No wings. Something that lived in walls. I parked in the same spot I'd used yesterday and walked straight to the entrance. The same woman sat at reception. She looked up when I came through the doors and frowned a little. "You're early," she said. "Need to see Becky Miller." "She's not expecting you until 9. "I know." She picked up the phone and dialed without looking away from me. Spoke quietly. Hung up. "She'll be down in a minute." I stood by the desk and waited. Didn't sit. The lobby smelled the same. Disinfectant and floor wax and something underneath that didn't have a name. Becky came through the door after 3 minutes. She wore a different blouse today. Dark blue, same lab coat. Her hair pulled back tight again. "Vernon," she said. Didn't smile. "You're early. I want to see Bo today, unannounced." Her expression shifted. Not much, just a tightness around her mouth. "We discussed scheduling yesterday." "I know what we discussed. I'm asking for observation without advance notice." She crossed her arms. "That's not standard procedure for evaluations," It is for mine. We stood there for a few seconds. The receptionist pretended to look at her computer screen. Becky exhaled through her nose. Fine. We'll call it transparency. Her tone said she didn't love the idea but wasn't going to fight me on it. Where do you want to start? Literacy program. You said he tutors twice a week. He does, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Today's Thursday. It is. Then let's go. She turned without another word, and I followed her through the same door as yesterday. Blake met us 2 hallways down, same uniform, same keys on his belt. He nodded at me and fell in step beside Becky. We walked through 3 more locked doors. Blake swiped each one without speaking. The hallways got narrower the deeper we went. Older paint, scuffed baseboards, fluorescents that hummed louder than the ones near the front. Becky stopped outside a door with a small window at eye level. This is the literacy room. Sessions run from 9 to 10:30 on program days. I checked my watch. 7:50. They start early? Instructor's discretion. Stephanie likes to begin setup around 8. I looked through the window. The room was about 15 by 20. Tables arranged in a loose square. Shelves along the back wall with workbooks and folders. A woman stood near the shelves writing something on a clipboard. Auburn hair, cardigan, lanyard with an ID card clipped to her belt. Lucas sat at one of the tables. Same stringy blonde hair. Same hollow cheeks. He had a workbook open in front of him and a pencil in his hand. I didn't see Bo. Blake unlocked the door and pushed it open. The woman with the clipboard turned. She looked at Becky first, then at me. "Morning," Becky said. "This is Vernon Price. He's conducting an evaluation and wanted to observe the program." The woman nodded. "Stephanie Jenkins. I'm the contractor running literacy sessions." I stepped inside. The room smelled like old paper and marker ink. Lucas looked up when I entered, and his hand moved to cover the workbook. "Where's Bo?" I asked. Stephanie glanced at Becky, then back at me. "He was pulled for a medical appointment about 20 minutes ago." "What kind of appointment?" "I don't know. An orderly came and said they needed him in medical. That's all I was told." I looked at Becky. She kept her face neutral. "Routine checkup," she said. "We run them quarterly." On a Thursday morning during his program time, scheduling conflicts happen. I turned back to Lucas. He still had his hand over the workbook. His eyes were fixed on the table. "Can I talk to him?" I asked Stephanie. "Sure, go ahead." I walked over to the table and pulled out the chair across from Lucas. Sat down, slow. He didn't look up. "Lucas," I said. "I'm Vernon. I was here yesterday." He nodded once. Very small. "You work with Bo, right?" Another nod. "What do you guys work on?" He lifted his hand off the workbook, pushed it toward me a little. I looked down at the page. Fill in the blank sentences. The cat sat on the blank. The dog ran to the blank. Same kind of thing I'd seen yesterday. The margins were covered in drawings again, circles with 6 legs, rows of them marching down the side of the page. "You're doing good," I said. Lucas's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Hard to tell. "Bo helps you with the words?" "Yeah." His voice came out quiet, almost a whisper. "He's patient with you?" "Yeah." "He ever bring you anything? Books or worksheets or things like that?" Lucas looked up for the first time. His pale blue eyes met mine for half a second, then darted away. "Sometimes," he said. "Like what?" He reached under the workbook and pulled out a thin book. Paperback. Maybe 30 pages. The cover showed a drawing of a bug with a crown sitting on a clock face. The title was printed in big letters above it. The Clock Bug and the Quiet King. I took the book and turned it over. No author name. No publisher information. Just a barcode sticker on the back that looked old and half peeled. "Where'd this come from?" I asked. "Bo found it. On the library card." "He gave it to you?" Lucas nodded. He said it was special. I opened the cover. The pages inside were yellowed, brittle at the edges. The text was large and simple. First grade reading level maybe. The illustrations were hand-drawn, rough ink lines. The bug appeared on every page wearing the same crown. I flexed the book a little. The spine cracked. "Can I borrow this?" I asked Lucas. He looked nervous. His hand reached out like he wanted to take it back. "I'll bring it back," I said. "I just want to look at it." He pulled his hand into his lap, nodded again. I stood up and walked back to Stephanie. "Where's the library card?" She blinked. Storage closet down the hall. We keep the extra materials there. Can you show me?" Stephanie looked at Becky. Becky's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Blake can take you," Becky said. Blake stepped forward. "This way." We left the literacy room and walked back into the hallway. Becky stayed behind. Blake led me past 2 more doors and stopped at a 3rd. Unlocked it. Inside was a woman in her mid-40s, straight dark blonde hair, thin glasses. She stood beside a metal cart stacked with books and manila folders. "Daisy," Blake said, "this is Vernon Price. He needs to see the cart." Daisy looked at me, then at the book in my hand. "Is that from literacy?" she asked. "Lucas had it. Said Bo found it on the cart." Her face went careful. "That's not possible." "Why not?" "Because that title isn't in our inventory. I would have flagged it." "Why?" She pointed at the book. "Children's books are usually restricted, staples and sharp edges. We don't circulate them in general population." I looked down at the book again. The cover was held together with 2 staples in the spine. Old ones. Rusted a little. "So, how'd it get on the cart?" I asked. "I don't know." I handed her the book. "Can I sign it out? I want to take a closer look." Daisy hesitated. Then she pulled a clipboard off the cart and flipped to a blank page. "Name and date." I wrote both. Handed the clipboard back. She took the book and turned it over in her hands. "You'll need to return it when you're done." "I will." She gave it back to me. I held it flat in my palm. The pages felt gritty, like dust had settled into the fibers and dried there. I pinched the spine between my thumb and forefinger and flexed it. Something shifted inside. A faint sound, dry and light, like rice grains sliding against each other. I stopped. Daisy was watching me. "What is it?" "Something's in here." "In the book?" "Yeah." I turned and walked out of the storage closet. Blake followed. I didn't wait for him to lock the door, just kept walking back toward the lobby. Becky was in the hallway near reception when I came around the corner. She saw the book in my hand and her expression shifted. "What's that?" she asked. "Children's book. Lucas said Bo gave it to him. Said Bo called it special." "Special how?" "Don't know yet." I held the book up. "You ever see this before?" She stepped closer and looked at the cover, shook her head. "No. It's not in your inventory." Daisy confirmed that. "Then it shouldn't be in circulation." "But it is." Becky's mouth thinned. "Where did it come from?" "That's what I'm asking you." She didn't answer. I flexed the spine again. The sound came again, louder this time. Becky heard it too. Her eyes dropped to the book. "What is that?" she asked. "Something inside the pages." "Inside?" "Yeah." I was about to say more when the alarm went off. Loud, sharp. 3 bursts followed by a pause, then 3 more. The kind of sound that meant someone needed to move fast. Blake's radio crackled. A voice came through. "Dispatch, female, calm but clipped. Code yellow, laundry wing. Subject Jude Ortega. Missing as of 0800. Last seen near service tunnels. All available units respond." Blake pressed the button on his radio. "Copy, en route." He looked at Becky. She looked at me. "Stay here," she said. Then she turned and ran. The laundry wing, service tunnels. That part snapped everything into place. The fire 6 years ago, Bo had started it during a shift change near the laundry area. He'd known the layout, the timing, the access points, maintenance corridors, service routes, places staff didn't watch closely because they were just background infrastructure. He was doing it again. I turned to Becky. "Where's Bo right now?" She blinked. "Medical. I told you, he had a quarterly." "Which unit?" "The clinic on 3. Vernon, we have a missing worker. We need to verify where Bo is." I was already moving back down the hallway, still holding the book. "Right now." Blake's radio crackled again. Dispatch repeating the code yellow, adding that Jude's time card showed he'd clocked in at 7:45 and was last seen near the loading dock. Blake acknowledged and started walking fast toward the emergency stairs. I kept pace. Becky followed, her shoes clicking on the linoleum. "Vernon, you're overreacting," she said. Her voice had that tight professional edge again. "Bo is in medical. He's supervised. This is a separate incident. Then we'll confirm it, and I'll apologize." Blake pushed through the stairwell door and took the steps 2 at a time. I followed. The book felt heavier in my hand than it should have. That faint sliding sound inside the pages every time I moved. The clinic was on the 3rd floor, east wing. Bright fluorescence, white walls, smell of antiseptic and latex. A charge nurse stood behind a counter organizing files. She looked up when we came through the door. Late 50s, short gray hair, scrubs with a name tag that said Everly Martinez. "Where's Bo Haley?" I asked. Everly frowned. "Who?" Becky stepped forward. "The patient from high security. He had a 9 o'clock appointment. I don't have anyone scheduled for 9. Everly turned to her computer, clicked through a few screens. No Haley on the roster today. Becky's face went pale, just for a second. Then she recovered. There must be a mistake. An orderly took him 20 minutes ago. Not to this clinic. Everly's tone was flat, certain. I set the book on the counter. "Do you have a transport log?" Everly pulled a clipboard from a wall rack and flipped through the top pages. "Here, 7:50, patient transport to medical, signed by..." She squinted. "J. Brennan." "Is Brennan working today?" "No, she's on leave until next week." Blake swore under his breath. I picked up the clipboard and looked at the signature. Neat, careful loops. Too careful. The kind of handwriting someone copies when they're trying to match a style they've seen before. I handed the clipboard back to Everly. "Call security. Tell them Bo Haley is unaccounted for and was last transported under a false signature at 7:50. Everly reached for the phone. Becky stood frozen, staring at the clipboard. I turned to Blake. "Where's the service stairwell from here?" "South end of the wing." "Why?" I was already walking. Blake followed. Becky didn't move at first, then caught up. "Vernon, wait!" "He's heading for the tunnels," I said. "Same access pattern as the fire. Laundry, loading dock, service corridors. He knows the blind spots. But how would he..." "The bugs." I stopped at the end of the hallway, turned to face her. "The husks on the windowsill, the vent debris in the incident reports. The bug in my hotel room last night. Lucas's drawings. The book." I held it up. "It's all one method. He's been moving them through the ventilation system, paper and bugs, testing routes, mapping the facility from the inside." Becky stared at me. "That's..." "Where's the service stairwell?" Blake pointed to a door at the far end marked "Authorized Personnel Only." I headed for it. Blake swiped his card and pulled the handle. The door stuck. He pulled harder, and it opened with a scraping sound, like something had warped the frame. The smell hit me immediately. Sour sweet. Organic rot mixed with something sharper. Chemical. I stepped through and Blake followed, pulling a flashlight from his belt. The stairwell was narrow, Concrete walls painted industrial gray, metal stairs descending into darkness. The smell got stronger as we went down. Husks lined the edges of each step, dozens of them, small, pale, brittle, some whole, some crushed under boots. The flashlight beam caught them, and they glittered faintly. Translucent shells piled in the corners where the walls met the stairs. We reached the basement level. Another door, already propped open with a wedge of folded cardboard. Blake shone the light through. The tunnel beyond stretched 20 feet before branching left and right. Low ceiling, exposed pipes overhead, concrete floor stained dark in patches. The husks were thicker here, scattered across the ground in drifts. And paper, curls of it. Thin strips chewed and damp, clumped near the walls. Some still had faint printing. Fragments of worksheets, forms, pages torn from books. Blake's radio crackled. Dispatch reporting no sign of Jude in the loading dock area, expanding search to adjacent corridors. Blake responded that we were in the service tunnels, basement level, and needed backup. I moved forward. The flashlight beam swept across the tunnel and caught movement near a vent grate on the left wall. I stopped. Bugs, pale, soft-bodied, six-legged, crawling over each other in a mass about the size of my fist, clustered around the edges of the grate where it didn't sit flush against the wall. They moved slowly, almost sluggish, like they'd just emerged from somewhere warm and dark. Blake saw them too. He didn't say anything, just kept the light steady. I looked down the left branch of the tunnel. The smell was stronger that way, sour-sweet and chemical, thick enough to taste. We went left. The tunnel narrowed. Pipes ran lower overhead, close enough that I had to duck twice. More husks, more paper curls. The concrete under my boots felt gritty, like something had been ground into the surface. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a junction. 3 routes splitting off. Blake's flashlight caught a shape in the center. Bo. He stood facing us, holding the children's book open in both hands. His expression was calm, focused. Behind him, sitting on the ground with his back against the wall, was Jude. Thin, mid-20s, curly dark hair, laundry worker uniform. His hands were tied behind him with what looked like torn strips of fabric. His eyes were wide, red from crying, but he was breathing. Alive. Bo didn't move, just stood there with the book open, pages facing us. The flashlight beam hit the illustration, the crown bug, but different now. The king's mouth was sewn shut with rough black stitches, and the bug wasn't on the clock anymore. It was crawling through the page itself, emerging from the paper, legs breaking through the surface. Bo tilted the book slightly, then gestured toward the vent grate on the wall to his right. The same slow, deliberate movement, page to vent, vent to page. "It's a loop," he said. His voice was quiet, almost conversational. "Input and output. They go where the paper goes. I just had to show them the path." I took a step forward. Bo didn't react. "Jude's not part of this," I said. "Let him go." "He's fine." Bo glanced back at Jude, then returned his attention to the book. "I just needed him here. Witness makes it real." Blake's hand moved toward his radio. Bo's eyes flicked to him. "Don't," Bo said. "Not yet." Behind him, near the right-hand tunnel, I saw a metal chute built into the wall. Incinerator access. And on the ground beside it, a plastic jug. The kind maintenance uses for solvents. The cap was off. Bo followed my gaze. "You're quick," he said. "That's why I asked for you." He set the book down on the ground, pages still open, and picked up the jug. The chemical smell spiked. He tilted it and poured a thin stream onto the concrete near the chute. The liquid spread, dark and slick. I moved. Fast. Blake shouted something behind me, but I was already closing the distance. Bo's hand went to the control panel on the chute, red button, ignition switch for the incinerator system. I lunged and grabbed his wrist before he could press it. He twisted and swung the book at me with his other hand. The spine caught my knuckles hard, sharp edge scraping skin. I didn't let go. The book hit the ground and split open, pages scattering. And the bugs came. They poured out from between the pages. Dozens of them. Pale, crawling, swarming over my hand and up my wrist. I felt their legs, thin and delicate, moving across my skin. The itch started immediately. Sharp, burning. Blake tackled Bo from the side. They went down hard, Blake's weight pinning Bo's shoulders. I kicked the solvent jug away from the chute, heard it clatter and spill further down the tunnel. Then I grabbed Bo's other arm and slammed it against the concrete, away from the control panel. Bo didn't fight. He just looked at me, pale green eyes steady, and smiled. The bugs kept crawling, up my arm, across my jacket. I shook them off, but more kept coming, spilling from the torn pages of the book. Becky appeared in the tunnel entrance, froze when she saw the bugs crawling over her shoes. Blake had his cuffs out. He yanked Bo's arms behind his back and locked the cuffs tight. Bo didn't resist, just kept smiling. Footsteps behind us, more flashlights, security arriving. A woman's voice, sharp and commanding. Clear the area. Get the patient secured. Holly Carr. Sergeant stripes on her uniform, dark hair pulled tight. She took one look at the scene and started directing her team. 2 officers moved in and hauled Bo to his feet. He didn't struggle, just looked back at me one more time before they dragged him toward the stairs. I went to Jude, pulled a pocket knife from my jacket and cut the fabric binding his wrists. His hands were red, circulation cut off. He gasped and started crying again, curling forward. "You're okay," I said. "It's over." He nodded, couldn't speak. Holly crouched beside him, checking his pulse, asking him questions in a calm, steady voice. I looked down at my hand. The bugs were gone, brushed off or scattered, but my knuckles were swelling, skin red and raised where the book had hit. Small blisters forming along the edge. Blake stood beside me, breathing hard. "What the hell was that?" I didn't answer, just stared at the torn pages on the ground, the pale husks scattered between them. I filed the report 2 days later. Sat in a state office in Worcester with Dawn across the desk and a laptop open in front of me. My right hand was bandaged, swollen worse than before. The blisters had spread up my wrist. Doctor said it was contact dermatitis, probably from the bugs. Prescribed cream and antibiotics. The report took 4 pages. I documented everything. The book, the bugs, the vent debris, the false transport signature, the solvent, and incinerator. I added a section on systemic vulnerabilities, inadequate vent maintenance, unrestricted paper circulation, staff incentive structures that rewarded positive reporting over accurate reporting. Don read it twice. Then he looked at me. "This blocks the transfer. That's the idea. They're going to fight it. Let them." He closed the laptop. "You did good, Vernon. I didn't feel good. I felt tired, and my hand hurt." Home was a 2-story colonial in Worcester, 10 minutes from the office. Rebecca met me at the door when I pulled into the driveway. She'd already called the doctor and set up a follow-up appointment for the next morning. She didn't ask a lot of questions, just looked at the bandage and told me to sit down. Janet was at school. I was glad. I didn't want her to see the hand yet. Rebecca brought me water and the antibiotics. I took them and leaned back on the couch. She sat beside me. "You're done with this one?" she asked. "Yeah." "Good." I finished the documentation that night, sent the final version to Don, and copied the state oversight board. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the kitchen with the lights off, staring at my bandaged hand. The blisters throbbed. Steady. Rhythmic. I kept thinking about the bugs crawling out of the book. The way Bo had smiled. 3 weeks later, I was in my office at home filing paperwork from a different case. Something routine. Insurance fraud. Nothing dangerous. Janet knocked on the door. Dad? Yeah? Can I borrow your stapler? Sure, it's on the desk. She came in, grabbed the stapler, started to leave. Then she stopped. What's this? I looked up. She was holding something small between her fingers. A thin curl of paper, pale, damp-looking, torn edges. My chest tightened. Where'd you find that? On my desk. I thought it was from one of my notebooks, but she trailed off, staring at it. I stood up and crossed the room, took the paper from her hand. It was soft, almost pulpy. The edges were ragged, chewed. I looked past her, through the doorway, into her room. Her desk was visible, cluttered with school supplies and books, and on the corner, near the lamp, I saw it. A pale husk, small, brittle, 6 legs. Go downstairs, I said. Dad, now, Janet. She left. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, quick and confused. I walked into her room and picked up the husk. It disintegrated between my fingers, fragile and hollow. I checked the desk, the windowsill, the edges of the floor, nothing else, just the one. I threw the husk and the paper curl into the trash. Then I checked the vents. The register in her room was screwed tight, no gaps. But the return vent in the hallway was loose. I pulled it off and shone my phone's flashlight inside. Nothing, just dust and darkness. I replaced the register and went downstairs. Rebecca was in the kitchen with Janet, talking quietly. She looked up when I came in. Everything okay? Yeah. I didn't know if I believed it. That night, I stayed awake until dawn, sitting in the living room with the lights off, listening to every sound, the furnace cycling on, the house settling, the faint scrape of branches against the siding. I'd stopped the transfer, filed the report, documented the vulnerabilities. Bo was locked down in maximum security, no access to programs or materials, but he'd already set something in motion. I knew that, and I didn't know how far it had spread.